problems that Germany had in the post-World War I era. And we talked about the economic issues that they had and the hyperinflation crisis, which causes mass turmoil in the German economy. The war reparations were robbing them of the resources and the money that they had. The French had come in and occupied the Ruhr Valley, and it was causing a lot of angst within Europe, and tensions were starting to rise. But uh, not everything terrible is going on in Germany. Part of their political issues was that they were looking for some friends, and they reach out in 1921 to an unlikely ally. In 1921, they signed something called the Rapallo Treaty with the Soviet Union. Yes, the newly formed Soviet Union, the communist government, like Germany, they were both kind of outcasts. Not everybody was really willing to be friendly with them. And Germany and the Soviet Union see this as an opportunity to develop a friendship. And all the Rapallo Treaty does is it gets Germany and the Soviet Union to give up any war debt claims that they have from World War One, any land claims that were still in dispute, and basically it's a signal to the rest of the world that we're going to try to develop a friendship. Sometimes in politics, you get these unlikely allies, and so like we said, Germany and the Soviet Union are looking for friends. They're both looking for friends, and they find each other, an unlikely alliance. Germany is going to try to make peace in 1925 with what we call the Locarno Pact. By the way, Rapallo and Locarno are both the locations of these. Rapallo is a town in Italy, and Locarno is a Swiss city. But the Locarno Pact, Germany decides that they want to try to fulfill the obligations of the Treaty of Versailles, and so they get together with France and Great Britain and the other major European powers, and they say, listen, we're willing to make some concessions here. We're willing to recognize the new borders between Germany and France, and we're also willing to accept the loss of Alsace and Lorraine, which was a big deal to the French. Now they're going to get it in writing that Germany is not going to try to make any moves on Alsace and Lorraine in the future, and this is a big deal. In exchange, the French are going to give up their occupation of the Ruhr Valley. They're going to stop going in and forcing the resources out of Germany by military operation. Germany would also be allowed to become a member of the League of Nations, and the Germans would promise to demilitarize a portion of territory on that French-German border called the Rhineland, and that nobody would have a military in the Rhineland. That way, France would feel a little more comfortable that if there ever was a French attack, it would take them a while to get to France because no military was allowed in the Rhineland. And the Locarno Pact is seen in the world as kind of a miracle. It helps settle the bad blood of World War One, and people see this as maybe we're going to diffuse some of these problems in the future, that Germany's willing to recognize the borders. The problem is that the Locarno Pact did not address uh, Germany's borders on the Eastern Front. And so there's no recognition of borders with Czechoslovakia or the newly formed Poland. And Germany never made any promises about disarmament, about their military in the future. And so there were some potential flaws with it. Okay, and we're going to see those come to fruition later. Now, one of those that Germany didn't start telling people about was they were secretly beginning to rearm. Germany knew that France was going to inspect occasionally factories and different locations to look to see if Germany was indeed complying with the Treaty of Versailles on the military limitations. So, what they started doing was, with the help of their new friend, the Soviet Union, they began to kind of plot in secret. And so the Soviet Union allowed them places inside Soviet borders to develop and test new weaponry. So the Germans get right on this. Also, the Germans were very active in a number of chemical endeavors where the chemicals industry, pharmaceuticals, and other industries like that, which had military applications, they were already developing that. But since they had applications other than just the military, the French and other European powers felt like they couldn't really get mad at the Germans for that. So uh, Germany's going to start to secretly rearm. Now, also in the 1920s, you're going to get the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. And when you think of Hitler and the Nazis, certain images come to mind. I have to laugh at this one a little bit. This is like a baby Hitler right here. And we think of always the characteristic mustache of Hitler. And when you see Hitler or you think of Hitler, you also think of this, the swastika, the symbol of the Nazis. But here's a little background about Hitler that's important for us. Hitler at the end of World War One is kind of a man, a younger man, who is adrift. He served in the German army, and he served honorably. He won several medals, and Hitler, after the war's over, is very distraught. He's very upset about Germany. He feels like they were, quote, stabbed in the back, and that certain people were responsible for surrendering the German nation to the Allies. And Hitler sticks with the army after the war because he doesn't really know what to do. And he part of his job was to investigate political parties in the newly formed Weimar Republic. So he would make sure these political parties aren't plotting anything. And so he'd go and secretly try to listen in and see what these parties were all about. And he falls in with a group of people who will later become the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Nazis for short. Um, and when he first stumbles upon these Nazis, they're kind of a nobody. They don't have the swastika as their symbol. There's maybe like 10, 15 of them. And they're more or less just kind of meeting in a bar and talking about politics. But Hitler finds himself drawn to them. And so Hitler and the Nazis are going to become more intriguing to the German public. But here's the thing, they're very careful about everything that they do, including not just the picture of the swastika here, but the colors as well. The swastika is an old symbol, and we'll get to that in a second, but they even pick the colors red, white, and black because they're the old German flag imperial colors. And so the Nazis are very forward thinking in terms of how to control people and how to manipulate their feelings. They're going to be masters of propaganda. Now, Hitler and the Nazis, they come up with certain concepts, including that there is one superior race, the Aryan race, which makes up most of the German people. But he claims that the German nation has been polluted by certain groups, including the Jews, and later on he would say the communists were kind of an irritant, and those are the two great evils in the world. And Hitler starts developing a belief system, a fascist belief system, where there are groups that are superior and there's a sense of strong nationalism that we're better than everyone else. And Hitler and the Nazis start to develop a strong following. They start building a massive party where tens of thousands of people are going to be part of this group. And Hitler, his first goal in the 1920s was to put together a coup, an illegal takeover of the government. And in 1923, at the height of the hyperinflation crisis, Hitler's going to try to take over power in Germany, and he fails miserably, and he's going to go to prison for it. Um, and but strangely, he only goes to prison. His sentence is something like 5 years, and he doesn't even serve 3, which seems kind of light in retrospect. But there's a lot of people sympathetic to Hitler and the Nazis. And so he wants to see Germany prosper. And when he's in prison, he writes his book, Mein Kampf, which means my struggle. And he starts developing a plan for what he wants to do in the future. And in the 1920s, Hitler tries to take over the government. He's going to spend some time in prison, and he's going to develop more party ideology and specific beliefs. And the swastika was one of them. But if you look, the swastika has been around for a long time. You take a look at this picture right here. It's a mosaic on the floor of a Roman building. This is a favorite right here. A women's hockey team prior to 1919 with the swastika as a symbol. You go back, this is a Buddhist temple in Korea. People used the symbol of a swastika because it meant prosperity and success. And so Hitler and the Nazis borrowed the swastika. Unfortunately, they've ruined it for everybody, though. And you see, even Coca-Cola had a little keychain that you could purchase, and it too was a form of a swastika. So Germany's got a lot of problems, and at the same time, those problems are going to give rise to people like Hitler and the Nazis.